Everyone, this is Jerome Braggs of JeromeBraggs.com, the intuitive guide who teaches spiritual seekers how to heal themselves and manifest healthy and delicious lives through the practice of self-love. Today's video is dedicated to a YouTube follower's question that was recently submitted to me that I really wanted to address. So I want to read the question to you. This is coming from Julia. So Julia, this is your question. And Julia is asking, I was wondering if you could have a teaching video on why cancer happens and why it seems to be so prevalent in our society. Just this past week, 2 people I know have passed from it, and my cousin is days away from her own death after a long battle with ovarian cancer. It seems like there's a major lesson here for us, and I appreciate your insights. So first, my heart goes to you with your loved ones who are both dealing with cancer and who have transitioned from the experience of cancer. I know how tough that can be to lose a loved one to illness, and I know how tough that can be to be with a loved one that has gone through illness, as someone who's gone through terminal disease myself. So I want to break this up into 2 parts in my addressing of this. And its first is to talk about why cancer happens. And from the soul's perspective, right? So from your soul's perspective, not necessarily from the medical perspective, because I'm not a medical professional, but I am a soul healer. I am a soul teacher and an intuitive channel and all those things. And I understand someone who is healed from disease himself. So I know a little bit about this from another perspective. And I want to speak from that aspect because I think that's why you're asking it. So the first thing to understand is that disease is not a punishment or an enemy or something that just comes upon us. It is a conversation. Disease is a conversation. And it is a conversation from our soul using our body and the health state of our body to have a conversation with us, because that is the way we will most pay attention. It's been trying to have this conversation with us before through many different avenues, many different vessels, but we have not been paying attention to it. And so the last kind of defense, if you will, is the health state of the body, because that's something that is very hard to not pay attention to not stop and listen to and pay attention to. And the conversation that disease is always about is that the way we have been living our lives somehow has been starving us of the energy of our soul. Instead of becoming more of our soul than our lives, we have been becoming less. Instead of expanding the energy of our soul in the way we've been living, we have been diminishing it. Our aura has been shrinking instead of expanding. And this shrinkage, this what I call malnourishment of our soul's energy, is not benign. And our bodies were literally created to run off of the energy of our soul. It is fuel for the body, just like gas is fuel for the car. The car cannot run without gas. Our bodies cannot run without a large amount of our soul's energy in our bodies. But there are different ways in which we live. There are different ways in which beliefs we can hold, behaviors that we can elicit, choices that we make, and lifestyles that we live, that instead of expanding our souls, becoming more and more of our souls in our lives, we become less and less and less. Right? And so disease is the manifestation of this lessening of the soul. And so that's one of the reasons why cancer happens, is because for this particular person who is experiencing cancer, they have been diminished. Their true essence has been diminishing in their life in some way. Now, that conversation is very particular to you. Right? So it's not going to be the same for everybody. Like for me, the diseases that I had were HIV and kidney failure. And HIV, the conversation that HIV came to have with me is that I had been living a life of shame and suppression. I had been feeling ashamed of many aspects of myself for years, and that had starved me of the energy of my soul, because one of the pieces of the energy of our soul is the vibration of worthiness. And you can't feel worthy and feel ashamed of yourself at the same time. And I had been feeling ashamed of myself for years. And kidney failure for me was about um, not like prioritizing my responsibilities and obligations and neglecting my needs of fulfillment and fun and joy and passion, the yearnings that I was having, the passion, the dreams and things that were calling me. I wasn't meeting those. I wasn't fulfilling those, and I wasn't resting. I was in overwhelm, and I was constantly in meeting, constantly everything that was on my plate was about responsibility and obligation and not what brought me joy. And so I was heavily out of balance, and I felt heavily malnourished, and I felt very, very, very unfulfilled. And so that was the message that the conversation that disease came to have for me was, this is how you are shrinking yourself this way. So disease, whatever it is, so somebody else's that may have kidney failure, their conversation may have been different. But again, the essence of the conversation is always the same. But how you're starving yourself, how you're starving your soul, how you're shrinking your soul may be unique to particularly you, right? The things that you've been doing, the beliefs that you've been holding, the choices that you've been making, those were my choices that manifested those particular illnesses for me. And so again, health is when we are living a life that helps our aura expand, helps our energy expand and grow and be fed. Illness and disease manifest when we've been living a life that is consistently and chronically starving the energy of our soul, so that instead of it expanding in our lives, it is shrinking. So cancer is one of those manifestations that happens when it shrinks. And one of the particular reflections, I've worked with several people over the years in helping them, go on the path to healing themselves from cancer. And like, for instance, I've worked with several men who have been diagnosed with prostate cancer. And when we've looked at what was the conversation their body was trying to have with them, one of the commonalities between prostate cancer was they were not feeling worthy as a man anymore. There was something about their manhood that they were feeling unworthy and unlovable, right? So they may have lost a job and they weren't making as much money anymore. And because men get a lot of messages in their culture and in their families that what makes a good man is to be a provider. And when you're no longer able to be this provider, they lose their sense of worth and they start to feel bad about themselves. And if they hold that chronically, for these particular clients, that was what had manifested their prostate cancer. The same, I've worked with several women who've had breast cancer, and one of the things that was underlying for them was not feeling good as a woman anymore, not feeling lovable and appreciated as a woman. For them, sometimes their partner left them for someone else. Their partner cheated on them, or they were constantly having to meet the needs of their family and other people in their lives, and they weren't being met, their needs weren't being met, and their needs weren't being nourished, and they weren't feeling seen and appreciated as a woman in their life. And so these type of things, right? So again, it's not always just worthiness that causes feelings of unworthiness that causes a shrinkage of the energy of the soul, because the soul's energy is made up of 5 core vibrations. So freedom, joy, worthiness, empowerment, and ease. If you have anything where those feelings are shrinking in you and you've been disconnected from those feelings for a long time, like if you feel stressed for a while, if you feel in bondage, especially if you're not being your true self in some type of way, you'll feel in bondage, or if you're in a relationship that doesn't allow you to express your truth in a way. These type of things will begin to shrink the energy of your soul. And if you do it for a long period of time, one thing that can happen is you will manifest disease from that. And so this is one of the reasons why cancer happens. This is why cancer happens. Cancer is not this thing that we've been taught so much in most of our medical systems across the planet, where it's just this betrayal of the body. This is what it looks like biologically, but the root cause of it, the source of it, is energetic. You are losing the energy of your soul through the way you've been living some type of way. And just random, if you can hear that is my printer just going off randomly. So excuse the sound, it'll be out of this video in just a second. But let's talk about why it's so prevalent. Like why cancer has become so prevalent in the world right now. And there's a few reasons for that. One is because we place so much attention on it. There's so much campaigns and conversations about fighting against cancer and ending cancer and being afraid of it that we have placed more fear in the collective consciousness around cancer. And fear also manifests just like passion and desire manifest, fear also manifests. Apologies, I had to come back. I had to get that printer together. So, continuing our conversation about fear, what we fear, we draw to us. Fear is an attractive energy, it is not a repelling energy. So, because we have a lot of campaigns and there are a lot of things out there, conversations and commercials, and we're talking so much about it, and even the doctors and how they talk to us about it is they add fear in it. And so there's a lot of fear around cancer. And the way this universe works, again, is what fear is an attractive energy. Also, if you hold a consciousness of fear, you must manifest something to be afraid of. So you can't be afraid of something and not have proof that you need to be afraid of that thing, because the universe is not here to make you crazy. The universe is here to make your beliefs come true. So if you believe that something is big, bad, and scary, it must manifest in a way that proves that that's true for you. So that's one of the reasons why collectively this is the case, that we're being forced to pay a lot of attention to cancer. And we're also, the conversation we're having around cancer is steeped and rooted in fear. And if we were having conversations around it without so much fear, and if it weren't inundated with it so much, you would actually see a drastic decline in how many people were experiencing cancer. Because again, fear diminishes the energy of the soul in the body, right? Because the energy of the soul is trust. The energy of the soul is all is well. And when you are holding fear in the body for a long time in your consciousness, in your vibrational field, that shrinks your aura. It shrinks your soul's energy in your body, and you can't hold that for a long time and be healthy. It just cannot happen. So that's one of the reasons. Another one of the reasons is because we live in a culture that in society that is not really teaching you how to nourish the energy of your soul and expand it. As a matter of fact, the dominant messages and narratives that come out of society and culture actually make you diminish. It makes you feel less than, makes you feel not enough, it makes you feel scared, it makes you feel not empowered, it makes you feel stressed, like you need to be doing more and putting more on yourself and being overwhelmed and hustle and grinding. It makes you feel like you can't really do what you want in this life. And so the majority of the people are getting these messages and narratives, and they're passing these messages on in their families, right? Even if they're not aware that they're passing this on. And so what's happening a lot in our families is we're teaching our children how to disconnect from their soul instead of connect to it and nourish it and expand it. So we're growing these culture and these generations more and more and more that are even more disconnected from their souls, because of how much fear and how much shame and how much bondage and how much disempowerment and how much stress is being passed down to us from culture and society and the institutions that we're involved in. And, I've said this many years, for many times our institution is very sick because it is not, our culture and society is very sick because it is not a culture that is fostering messages and narratives that help you, one, understand who you are as a soul and what you need as a soul to be well. And what you need as a soul to be well is to be expanding your aura, to do the things and to hold the beliefs that feed your soul and help it grow and expand instead of shrink. And so that's one of the things collectively, is because collectively as a society, we are passing down sick narratives and diminishing and shrinking messages and programs and paradigms. And of course, if that's what you're learning, that's what you're going to adopt, and that's how you're going to live. And so most people live up under the cultural norms and the societal rules and the societal narratives, and they're becoming sick. And this is one of the things. Cancer is a manifestation, a reflection of these sick narratives and these sick messages that we've been getting that's causing us to shrink and not expand the truth and the essence of and the fullness of who we really are. The last part I want to say is that cancer is not always about necessarily a shrinking of the soul's energy from the perspective of there's something draining or blocking you from becoming the fullness of yourself. Sometimes the soul is ready to exit this life and it needs an exit strategy. We all will have to exit this life. Death is a part of all of our experiences here. And we will choose our souls will choose different ways to exit. And disease is or illness is one of the ways in which some souls choose to exit this world. And one of the reasons why a soul will choose a disease like a cancer specifically as the way to exit the physical world back into the non-physical, back and crossover back into the other side, is because a lot of times cancer, a diagnosis of cancer will give their loved ones time to process their death, that they're getting ready to die, right? They're getting ready to transition. So a lot of times when they get a diagnosis, you may have, months or years before that person is going to make their transition, and their loved ones get in that time they get to prepare themselves for the transition of that person, right? They get to say the things they want to say to the person and spend more time with them. They get to prepare themselves, whatever, if they need to prepare their home for the transition of the person, or get their affairs in order, or help the person get their affairs in order. This is possible, and the soul will help to help the other souls that are attached to that person, that are part of their circle, that love them, that will help them in their grieving process because they had time, instead of just up and transitioning, like they just wake up the next morning and they're gone, which can be hard for some people to process, that their loved one, they didn't get to say goodbye, they didn't get to communicate with them, there were things left unsaid. And so a lot of times the soul will choose a disease to exit because they are thinking about their loved ones that they are attached to, and this will give them time to process and get ready for their own transition back to the other side, even if they're young, right? Because not all souls come to have a very long life. Some souls come to have a very short life here. And it doesn't mean that it wasn't fulfilling for them and it didn't fulfill their mission and their intentions, but they came to have a short experience. And a lot of times the souls that came to have a short experience, how they will leave the planet, a lot of times is through a disease, because it gives their parents time to process, it gives their siblings time to process, and their other loved ones, as well as people who are in their adult, years. It gives their kids time to process, their spouse or their lover time to process this and get ready. So this is one of the reasons also why cancer is prevalent today, and why we see it so much. But I hope this has answered some of the questions I hope this answered the question that you had about why cancer happens and why it seems so prevalent today. These are the reasons why. And remember always, disease is a conversation. It is not a punishment. It is not an enemy. It is a message. It is a wake-up call from the soul to begin to stop living a life that is diminishing you and start living a life that is expanding you. That is the path to your healing. If someone who has cancer wants to know what they need to do to begin to heal, they have the underlying factor is you have to begin to live the life that feeds you, that nourishes you, that expands you, instead of starves and shrinks you. As always, I love you. Now go love yourself.